to have
guys,
more,
let's pay attention to
particularly
what
in Central Florida.
Governor
So we'll do
Ron
that.
DeSantis
But you have
saying.
an opportunity today to do what you need to do to execute this plan. You have time today, but do it. But time is going to start running out very, very soon. We are effective at 10:30 a.m. We are suspending all tolls in western part of Central Florida.
So he was saying that if you have the time to, he's saying that you still have time, that you don't have to get hundreds of miles away, just get out of the areas in which you are more vulnerable, and if you have to evacuate, just get out of those areas. You don't have to go further away than that. But he's making actually some great points here.
Into Central Florida as well as Alligator Alley. You know, people sometimes will say, you know, where do you evacuate to? They just want to get out. They don't want to just stay local, and they want to get out. Well, I think that probably the easiest route would probably be to go north if you're in Central Florida, because the way the storm looks, it looks like it's going to have more of an impact on central and southern Florida. Most of these places in Tallahassee and northern Florida likely aren't going to see as significant of impacts. But be that as it may, just understand that if they have a storm going into the greater Tampa Bay area now, it is possible that that could shift further south. So if you do evacuate south, you may be ending up going to where you're going to have a lot of the storm anyways. We saw that with Hurricane Ian, so just be mindful of that. But again, you don't have to go hundreds of miles. That is not required. Any place that's going to be open as a shelter, Florida hotels that are built, you know, within the last however many 20, 30 years are all going to be able to withstand hurricane force winds. Sandbag locations are open in multiple counties in South and Central Florida. Check your county.
So that's a great point he's making. You don't have to go a huge distance, just especially if you know where you live, which you should. You should know where you live, how susceptible you are. Getting out of that area. This is something I've talked about so many times. Know the charts, the historic maps of how floods affects your area. Usually it's that, and you can add like a little bit of a safety buffer, but usually you're out of there, you're good. You don't have to get, you know, hundreds and hundreds of miles away from everything. But guys, yes, this is about this storm that is coming, and it's looking pretty nasty. It's a category 5 at this point, so could it get, you know, downgraded once it hits land? It could, but I mean, it's gonna be huge if you stay. Well, that's a little bit dramatic, but yeah, it may well be the case. Depending on where you are, it may well be the case, so you want to prepare accordingly. Officials issue life or death warning while millions scramble to flee Florida as unprecedented 180 mile per hour Hurricane Milton barrels in, threatening to be the worst storm in 100 years. Florida storm hell. Okay, yeah, that's pretty fucking dramatic. And it is not a joke. It is serious stuff. But this is what you prepare for. If you live in this part of the country, you're someone that should at this point have your bags ready, cases, suitcases, you have your gear ready, you probably have a vehicle that allows you, but you want to avoid this. You want to avoid the congestion, all of the people that are all of a sudden stranded here. Usually evacuating in time, if you have a pre-planned route just to avoid the thick of the traffic, that's always better, but reacting in time. You have to go now. You have to go now. Do it before it gets to this point, right? Now, you still have until, what is it? This is going to hit tomorrow. So you have all day, probably today, still to get out of there. And yeah, it's not going to be fun. Not going to be fun at all. But the stuff that we talk about, the vehicle, the supplies, the plan, where you're going, the fuel, water. I mean, all of these things that people scramble at the last minute. And there's still going to be people affected, no doubt. So yeah. Guys, I wish you the best of luck. I hope you've been following the channel, you've been following the advice, and if you haven't, I always recommend the channel, my books, Surviving the Economic Collapse, Street Survival Skills. That's going to be good reading so as to be better prepared in the future. And yeah, that's going to be all for now. Take care.